Oh my God, can you imagine if you got to the end?
I did it before.
Oh, no way.
I was like, that's why I always have to little checks. Alright, let me do that again. I'm so sad. My bad.
Right, it's all good.
My bad. Oh, fuck's sakes. Yo, it's your boy Uncle Pre with another episode of the Unfltered Podcast. I just realised I wasn't clicking record on the mic. So, yeah. Luckily, we only got like 3 minutes into it, so we're all good. But this week, I have Alisha. She's here, come down all the way from Leicester. What are you saying, lovely?
I'm good, thank you. I'm really good.
Sorry about that.
It's all right. It's all good. Take two.
Take two. Give everyone a little introduction about yourself.
Again.
Yeah, again.
So yes, I'm Alisha. I do coaching. I work with parents, parenting, and I work with adults healing. Often the two are quite linked. So it's parenting, but it's not how to bring up your parent. It's more about healing the inner wounds. So that's what I do.
Fair. Healing your inner wounds.
We all have them.
Yeah. One of the topics we said that we might try and dive into.
I know, straight into it.
In regards to the whole generational trauma that possibly we've endured.
Possibly, I'd say more likely, definitely. I think people just don't realise it, you know?
Yeah. I don't like telling someone it straight away off the cuff when I speak to them. But after my own recent journey of seeing things from different angles, you're like, it's there. Yeah, it's there. And until you put in the work to start changing your current situation, whether it's at home or you're away from your parents, or even if it's not your parents, it's just family and relatives, you put yourself in a very dark place if you continue doing the same thing you've always done. Yeah,
absolutely. And people don't often see that it is the way, it's there because you're just so conditioned to be the way that you are, right?
Yeah.
You go through your whole childhood, you hit your adulthood, and you just are who you are, and so you just think this is just who I am. And I think that's where the parenting comes in for me personally. When you start to raise children and you start kind of teaching them what you know, and it doesn't necessarily align with what you want to get out of the whatever situation, and you start realizing, why am I doing this way? And that's when you realize that's because I was brought up like that. That's because I was taught this. That's because I became this kind of person, and I'm now just passing that on. But is that what I want to pass on? You start questioning yourself, and that's, for me, that's when I started to realize that actually generational trauma is a thing. Just the word trauma itself, a lot of people think, trauma's a really big word, right?
Yeah.
And no, I don't have trauma, because people tend to think trauma is something really big that's happened in your life, and that's trauma. But trauma is those things that happen, and then there's that emotional, long-lasting thing that lives inside of you.
Yeah.
That's the trauma. The trauma isn't the really big, great thing that happened.
Yeah.
But and I spoke to somebody recently, actually, and we talked about imagine if you're a kid and you get lost in a shop. That's traumatic.
Yeah.
But that could be 10 seconds, 30 seconds, not a big deal.
Yeah.
But that could really impact you and kind of your thinking and how your whole experience of going to a shop, anything like that. And that sticks with you. And in adulthood, you kind of might have traits that literally come from that one experience.
Yeah, for sure.
And you never really think about it because you think it was just, maybe you don't even remember that happened, when you get into adulthood. But then you start unpicking different things of your life in adulthood, and it kind of goes back to that. So everything that we are now and today kind of goes back to some kind of conditioning of who we became from our experiences in childhood. I
remember when I was in just using that as an example, when I was in Tenerife once as a child, I still do. I love the water. So as kids, it was my dad, my mum, my dad's friends, and then me and my sister. And I was going straight water park. This is me maybe 7 years old, 6 years old, just brave, going on all the rides myself. Everyone's just chilling elsewhere. I'm just venturing around this adventure park, and I was in this little dinghy, went down this tube, and it's just pitch dark, and apparently you just go down really fast, you go around in turns, and I got stuck, and I was I'm just singing along this whole way, and I'm let me just keep singing along, and I was just bumping myself kind of down, trying to get myself down there, and it must have been weird. I was stuck for a good 20 seconds. Didn't know what to do. Should I get off or not? I'm 7 years old. I ain't got a clue. Eventually managed to get myself down, get out, and I'm just trying to smile it off, walk straight to my parents, and I'm just crying, and they're just laughing. They're oh, bless you. And I'm nah, that's scary as shit, And I think if I ever go through like say like dark places like tunnels and stuff, I don't know, it could be psychologically something right there. Like you're just looking for that light. You're just constantly waiting for that light. No, I hear
And
you.
it comes from those kind of places. And even just like, you know, as adults, okay, yeah, we laugh it off because to us it's like, oh, it's not a big deal.
Yeah.
But how would your conditioning be different if there people reacted differently around you?
Nah.
They kind of acknowledge that, look, you've just experienced something. Might only be 20 seconds, but it's impacted you. So let's kind of explain like it's okay and this and that. And, you know, and it changes your thinking about similar situations moving forward.
It does.
If you never address it there and then, you make your own mind up how you feel in that moment. And then you just carry on going.
So if we try and like take this back to more, let's say, on the generational side of things, because it does come up a number of times on the pod, and like it's possibly hasn't been dug into that excessive detail, and I reckon you're probably the best person to have here and like really really deep it. When a child goes through a somewhat experience, let's actually use an event where something's happened from a family relative and a member, and whatever's happened, and years later, okay, maybe they finally start to discuss it. What challenges do you notice that these people have faced throughout that process?
You're like just kind of like right now telling my story.
Where?
Swear.
Okay.
So yeah. So what was the question?
What's the story?
So I've never talked about this.
Oh.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about it? You don't have to.
No.
Okay,
it's good. It's good. I've put it on my stories very recently on Instagram, so only like, you know, followers know. I've just never had a verbal discussion about it. But I did, as a kid, experience sexual abuse. And South Asian community, back in the day, it's just something that wasn't talked about. Never, ever, ever. So I was that kid that experienced something. And in all fairness, as a kid, you don't know, right? And you go through the years, and when you start to realise, I guess this is where my sort of like learning, my journey began, when I started to realise that in adulthood, that shit, I've actually experienced trauma, and I didn't really realise. I look back, you know, like very recently actually, I put out there on Instagram that I was one of these people that thought, people who know me now say, oh, you're so positive and, you know, like you're just always happy. And I always thought of myself like that. Like I am. I you know, negativity and me just don't mix. Like I am always positive, and that is just me. And I also thought, like, you know, I've never experienced mental health and it just doesn't hit me. And then I look back and I think, shit, Alisha, you tried to commit suicide when you were a kid. You self-harmed. Like you did all of this stuff and you never actually realised that you went through a cycle, but you didn't link the two. You were experiencing trauma. I wasn't healing. I was in the storm of it, but I never looked back and thought that that's what it was.
Yeah.
And then you go through your healing journey. For me, it began after kids, and I realised that, okay, I need to actually address this. I need to sort this out, and also probably because it came out. You know, when I was a kid, when I was in my teens, it was something I swore I would never talk about, just to protect my family. I would never bring it up because I didn't want to hurt anyone. You know, I didn't want anyone to be upset. I didn't want anyone to feel sorry for me. I didn't want to. I blamed myself, right? And I didn't want to bring it out. But the healing process has just taught me so much. Just so much of what I believed I was doing right by myself and by everyone else, I wasn't. And I don't even know what you asked me, actually, by the way. I told you I'd do this. But yeah, so going back to the whole generational thing, back then it wasn't spoken about, so you don't talk about it. When you realise it's wrong, it doesn't come up in conversation, right? And this is not just my experience, but this is just what a lot of kids go through. If we don't have open conversations with children, if we don't question what are we saying and what are we making normal, then what are they going to sort of think is normal and pass on to the next generation, you know? So for me, my work right now is very much about ending those generational patterns of, you can't talk about this isn't normal, this isn't acceptable, this doesn't happen, to actually it happens. Actually, we've got to talk about it, whatever it is, big or small, but it is normal and it happens, and we've got to have those open conversations so the next generation is more equipped to know how to deal with stuff, like anything, you know?
Yeah, no, I hear you.
Yeah.
It's interesting because you mentioned in that, like, people are in the storm. They normalize just being in the storm, right? And then you just get used to the shit weather, and it just becomes standard, right?
Yeah.
Like, and I think that's a very, very difficult place for people to like, when they see what's possible. It's a very uncomfortable feeling. Like, if you normalize yourself to just shit conditions, and it just becomes something that just doesn't really affect you no more. But outside, on the bigger scale of things, like, you are bugging out, you are behaving in a certain manner which isn't healthy for you. It's eye-opening to see what's possible. But then it's also interesting when you see people who can see this new light but are so against changing what they've normalized, essentially. That's not cool. And I feel like when you relate it back to, like, say, kids as well, like, I think we're in a much better place right now in the world where we're able to articulate these things and have our kids talk about things to a certain degree. But it doesn't change the fact that, like, our generation is still possibly keeping our mouth shut around some of the things that happened to us once upon a time. And it doesn't matter how small or big they are, right?
Yeah.
As far as I said, like, comparisons, you never compare yourself to your situation to someone else, but you can really, like, deep and understand it from perspective. What you've gone through, that's terrible to hear, you know?
Yeah.
And, like, to know that you possibly kept your mouth quiet about it for a period of time because you didn't want to possibly offend, or, like,
25 years.
That's scary, man.
But this is me knowing what I'm like. I feel like I've always lived two lives.
Yeah.
You know, always. I've lived the life of, like, what I'm dealing with on the inside, and the life of who I need to be for everybody else. So then life on the outside is normal. And now, I look at life now, and I think now that it's merged into one, and this is a much healthier and happier version. And I look at people who are going through their own, and I know, like, it doesn't have to be this way. You know, no matter how hard it is, it doesn't have to be that way. There is light at the end of the tunnel. And it's all about showing, I guess what we do, you know, in our coaching is showing them that light, that there is there. It's their journey.
Yeah.
But it's making it sort of visible that, look, it's there, it can be done. And it's never about comparing, right? And that's why I say everybody does have trauma, whatever, big or small. It's never about, well, you went through something worse, so that's different. Mine wasn't a big deal. If it impacted you and it changed you and it made you think a certain way and made you become a certain way, then it's impacted you. It needs to change.
What was the trigger for you personally to then say, yeah, I've got to make a change right now?
I think there was little triggers along the way. I think I didn't really kind of decide, okay, I need to change right now, here and there, everything, but slowly over time. So, like, health was one of them. I started to realize I was physically burning out, had episodes of just becoming sick, you know, and everyone around me telling me, oh, you need to kind of, like, slow down. And when I look back, I know why I was so busy, because I was keeping myself distracted. Like, you know, the harder sort of, like, flashbacks and things like that are, the more the daytime is like, just keep yourself busy, like, keep doing. So you kind of, like, start engaging in, like, self-sabotaging behaviors, they call it, right? Like, just keep yourself busy, keep doing everything for everyone else, like, so you're just not really focusing on you. And then when your health deteriorates, the reality is, if you sit with yourself and ask yourself, like, why am I ill all the time? You know why. You know, you're just not ready to face why. It's a lot of self-reflection you've got to do. But and then there was, I really specifically remember my daughter, and I remember one day thinking, like, you know, she doesn't open up, she doesn't talk about how she feels, she doesn't express how she feels. And if this is just who she is and this is her personality, that's absolutely fine. But if this is a learned behavior because she has watched mummy never express how she is, never cry in front of the kids, I can't have that. I need her to know that it's okay to express yourself. So it's really there where I started to realize that, what am I doing? What am I, like, I go into another room to cry, and then if I hear someone coming, I'll cover it up. Why am I covering it up? And then telling them it's okay to cry, it's okay to express yourself. That's why it all started after kids, because I started to realize that, actually, I don't want my kids to be like me. I don't want them to feel like they've got to do everything for everyone else and put themselves last. And the only way they're going to learn is if they watch me.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That is an important thing. Like the observational side of things makes a big difference. Like what you see is possibly what you end up doing from a young age, right? But nah, that's it makes. Well, I'm for other words, I'm just trying to say I'm glad you're doing that now, because like some people just don't catch it.
Yeah.
And you end up just going down this path. But what was it for you specifically then? Because I know you said like your health was deteriorating, but what was it that you can pinpoint right now that made you think, yeah, this shit can't run anymore? Because the example I want to throw out is that like I know of people who, and when I say people, I'm talking about close individuals, friends in particular, who we all know they're going through stuff. We all know they've got challenges. And I feel like to some degree, they know they're going through it. But it's so difficult for them to do something about it, either because they've normalized it, they don't want to inflict further pain on anyone else around them, they don't want to feel like a burden, etc. Yeah. But I feel like that's the tipping point. And that's when you can generally go down so much more of a negative spiral, and the dark thoughts start appearing. And then it's like, if anyone's listening to this right now and they ask themselves the question, shit, yeah, like I'm in that situation right now where it's bottling up and I don't know what to do next. What is your guidance on that perspective?
So for me, the crashing moment was when it's completely off topic now, actually. But actually, I actually remember the specific day that my head spiraled and I hit depression. And it's really weird. Like you can't, if you become depressed, if you go through that phase of life, it's kind of like going downhill. Like you don't just wake up one day and you're depressed. But for me, even though I was going downhill, it is a day, and it was the 26th of November. And the reason I remember that because my son went missing. And again, it was, I don't know, like a couple of minutes, right, in the morning. But I was in my kitchen. I only had two at the time, son and daughter. My mom had come over to go and drop my daughter off she was 4 to go, or 3 she was 3 to go drop her off to school, and I had my son in the other room. And I'm washing up and I'm calling him. Are you there? He's not responding. So I come out of the kitchen and I see the front door open, and he's basically he was 2 years old. He's just left the house to follow my mom probably. And I ran up the street. I tell you what, the one thing I experienced that morning was I couldn't run. My legs turned into jelly. I was screaming his name and I couldn't move. My body froze. Never, ever experienced that. But he was fine afterwards. And he had gone further up. Neighbour had found him, brought him back. He was okay. But from that moment onwards, I felt dead inside. And I don't know what came over me, but every day from that moment onwards, I felt I was just existing.
Yeah.
And it went on for a long time. And as it was just like you're in the midst of it. You just don't know what to do. You just don't know how to get out. And then I started to realize that, okay, I can't. It was having an impact on the people around me. You know, like you're living and you're surviving, but life around you is carrying on, especially when the kids are so young. Life around you is carrying on. So you cannot. This cannot be. So you carry on. You carry on doing what you're doing, right? You know, weekend, these are the plans. Okay, get ready, go out, do what you're doing. For me, the healing, I decided, I literally cannot pinpoint a moment of what it was. For me, it was just little moments with them.
Yeah.
Little moments where I catch myself smiling, and then the voice inside of me says, why are you smiling? Like, what is there to smile about right now? Yeah. And it was that internal conflict of, I want to feel something. You know, there's something inside of me fighting to feel something. But there's also something inside of me that is telling you there's nothing. Like, what, you know, and it's that internal conflict. And I didn't turn to anybody. And I think that's I won't say the worst mistake I made, because I'm very happy where I am now. But I think it's a much harder journey doing it on your own.
Of course.
When you start to reach out to people, when you start to even, you don't have to say what you're going through, but just communicate and connect with people. Human connection is so powerful.
Yeah.
just a text message to somebody really random about a really random topic, and they message you back, and you feel like, okay, let me message them back. You don't know what's going on under the surface of that. There is something happening inside, right? And it's the more you isolate yourself. I say I'm privileged that I went through my journey with people around me, even though it was it wasn't support. But if I was that person in a room on my own, it could look very different. But I had no choice but to keep on going. So the one thing I would tell people who are going through something similar is be around people. Even if you're not ready to have a conversation, just don't isolate yourself.
What if you're like, say, introverted, where you prefer your own space and you don't like being around people? See, this is the difficult part. Like, when I try to like take on board what you're saying, I feel like that's a perfect thing to do. Like, be around people.
Yeah.
And like, I can put it forward that get therapy, get counselling, speak to grievance counsellors, coaches, whatever. Like, there's so many options out there, but you can't force that down someone.
No, you can't. No.
It has to happen naturally, and then it's like, well, talk to your friends, do this, do that. But it's like, for someone who's possibly right now stuck in their room, generally feels like they can't come out. Coming out makes them feel suffocated, because it's like everyone's all around me, and they're like claustrophobic. And if I say something, like, can I say, are the words going to come out correctly? And what if I create a lot more animosity right now by just saying to someone, yeah, I'm struggling? And like, I think in those situations, it's so much more difficult. And I don't know, like for you, like you said right now, you just chose not to for years upon years, right?
Yeah.
And then these events that took place in regards to like your son going missing,
little things like
it was a trigger for you to say to yourself, you know what, nah, this can't run anymore. And then understanding, like, you don't want your daughter to be in a position where she can't like open up about how she's feeling. For those people who generally are stuck right now, what would you say? Like, if I was picking up the phone to say to little Alisha, I'd love to like try and work with you, but some of my trauma is X, Y, and Z. I just don't know who to go to. What steps are you possibly advising that person, or passing on to that person to then take?
If someone comes to me and if they don't have anybody, let's say they've got nobody to turn to, right? You don't need to have conversations with people, but you need to. It's the work is internal, right? You don't need to sit with a person and have a conversation with a person. But I'd give them. They need to be on their. If they need to be on their own, that's absolutely fine. But it's what thoughts are you with when you're on your own?
Yeah.
Right. Being on your own is okay, but what are you thinking when you're on your own? What's going around your head? So it's about working on your mindset. It's about giving people the tools that they need.
Yeah.
That they don't quite know. Like the questions, like you ask them one question that provokes a thought.
Yeah.
A question that they'll never ask themselves.
Yeah.
That will never provoke that thought. But the only way you're going to change a situation is when you start seeing the situation differently, right? You don't need people to do that for you. Only you can do that yourself. Having people around you helps, but it doesn't help, like you say, for an introvert, and you don't, that's worse for you. But the working on your mindset is the only way. For me, I do mindset coaching.
Yeah.
So for me, it's all about mindset. And if someone comes to me and is not willing... I won't say cannot change your mindset. You can change your mindset, but you've got to be that has to be your intention.
To do it.
Yeah, you have to. That has to be your intention. Like, if the intention isn't there, you can put up every barrier. But if someone comes to me at the beginning and says, "I want to make this change," I know that they want to make the change, regardless of whatever excuse they're going to give and whatever.
Do you not feel like sometimes they just say it for the sake of it? They kind of want it. They don't really want it. Because my biggest challenge I have is that when someone says to me they really want to shift something around their mentality towards women or men or what. And it's like, you say it, but you just keep doing the same bullshit again. So you don't kind of want it.
Yeah,
and
that's really hard to work with.
Yeah.
Because I feel like in that moment they do want it.
Yeah.
They have a realization, but then they kind of slip back into life again.
Yeah.
And it is really hard to make that transition. And for some people, it's harder. Unfortunately, you cannot change people who do not take the steps to change themselves, because our job isn't to do the work for them.
Yeah, no, it's not to do the work for them. But when I catch someone doing that, I generally go back to a place of, you keep doing the same things over and over again right now. what's going to continue to happen is that we can keep having the same conversation over and over again, but it's not going to help you move forward until you make the conscious decision to stop doing whatever the fuck you're doing right now. That's not allowing you to move forward, right?
Yeah.
And so then I realized that it's not this mindset you really want to work on, this change. It's more of a case of without me saying, help me no longer be this person anymore, because I know that's the reason why, but I don't know how to turn that off.
Yeah.
That's the addiction right now. It's the attention I need to be seeking.
It's their safety, right? Like, it's who they are, and it feels safe to just do what you're doing. The moment you're saying to someone, actually, what about this? It's like, no. That I can't do that. Like, you know, it's stepping outside of what's comfortable, right? And the moment you want someone to do something a little bit different, everything else comes up. Like, you know, like every other emotion can trigger, but actually what is triggering is that they feel completely out of their comfort zone, and it's like, no, that ain't me. But you've got to go outside of your comfort zone, you know, for anything to change.
So let's go back to this introvert who's sat in their room right now. They've reached out to you, so I possibly think, you know, congratulate them for reaching out, because at least they're trying to show some sort of step. But if, say, someone just listens to this right now and they're really in tune to what you're saying, what you said, like, you need to reflect on your mindset, right? That's if you're not having a conversation with someone, you're having a conversation with yourself. What prompts would you give to someone right now who's just listening to this in regards to things they can start doing? Because one of the biggest challenges I find, people say they don't like journaling, they don't like reflecting, and it's cool, it's not for everyone.
Yeah.
I mean, everyone has their own way of doing it. But it's when you sit down and either with a pen and pencil, whether it's a laptop, whatever, and you truly deep how you're feeling, you take a second to just pause everything and just think about things, your emotions may come to surface and it's like, damn, this is how I'm really feeling right now. Or you can start to plan things in a little bit of in a better direction, like what you want to do by the end of the week, what you want to achieve by the end. And like, when you give yourself that time, it's very important. But I'm asking you now, what would you tell someone to do in that scenario where they are feeling stuck, they're feeling trapped, they're feeling this thing that happened 20 years ago still bothers me and I don't know how to say it? Like, how are you?
One of the things I do, and it might be, it's probably different to the way other people do it, is I like to start people by just, no matter how deep they're feeling, think of a time you were happy, right? Just, it doesn't matter how long ago it was, but just think of a time where you felt a bit lightweighted, right? And start there. That could have been 20 years ago. That could have been one moment last week. But we start there and we start focusing on, because the healing and the inner work comes, but they need to see the light. And there has been light in their life. Right now it's just shaded. So we always start off with, think of a moment that you were happy. Think of what brings happiness into your life. It's not there right now and, you know, you feel like a far distance from it, but we start there. And then depending on like how the work's going, it always comes down to integrating a little bit of that along the way of their healing journey. You know, you're in your dark zone, I get it, but let's integrate, bring a little bit of light in. So this week, whilst we're doing the inner work, they commit themselves to doing something that in the past has brought happiness into their life. Because that is their true self. And as long as you keep bringing a little bit of that along the way, it also softens the healing process.
I hear you.
And even that hurt and that deep pain that they're going through, it just helps, because you cannot throw yourself into healing completely without having something to balance it. So yeah, that's my kind of always my starting point. And that looks different to everybody.
No, of course, finding that happy place. Like, I've tried that out a few times when I've had a client elaborate on just being literally very low, and it's like, no, you have felt happy at times. Just think about it. Especially like with confidence is another one. When someone always says to me my confidence is low, I'm like, no, you've been confident in certain areas of your life. You just won't acknowledge the fact that you were killing it in that. So I had a woman talk to me, and she loves cooking, right? And just never really like deeps the fact that how confident she feels when she's in the kitchen, when she's mixing up all of her stuff. And I'm like, gang, right? That's you right now. But you're telling me you lack confidence. You don't. Why do you back yourself when you're in the kitchen? I don't know. It just feels natural. What feels so natural about it? And when you start like opening up that kind of worms, you start to see, well, there are traits here that you have which you don't bring into other areas of your life. How could you start embedding the two? And Okay, cool. So you're going all the way back. This person that's listening to this pod right now and is in a situation, you're telling them to start thinking about times when they were happy first. But in terms of like finding the next steps and opening up, what would you... For other words, like if I said to you right now, you're basically going to have a flyer or a leaflet go right through their door, they're going to see it, and it's going to have a number of steps that they can start to take to start being able to be in a position where they can move forward and no longer feel stuck in this place that they're in. What's on that piece of paper?
All right, so you just kind of want my framework now of what I do. I mean,
She said it so seriously as well. Oh my God. When that's on the camera, she's...
forgot about the camera.
That was so savage. The eyes, that was scary. Shit. You have a framework that you work with?
Yeah, so this is kind of going off topic again. But yeah, so trying to transition doing what I do, the coaching, because it started off non-businessy into making it a business. I have a framework. So when I do the coaching program, there's a framework that I follow.
Does it work for everyone? Just out of curiosity, I know we're going off topic, but I'm intrigued by that.
I mean, I haven't had it not work. You adapt it, but yeah, it works.
That's interesting because, like, you don't have to share the framework if you don't want to, but it's more of a case of like the way I look at it, and maybe it's the style that I approach, or the style I apply to my coaching approaches. We know where we are, we know where we want to be, and there's steps that we need to take in between. But I can't write those steps for you. You're going to tell me what those steps are. You're going to give me the blueprint, the map, and I'm going to hold you accountable to that throughout. But I know for a fact, and this has happened based on, maybe it's the clients that I work with, within a couple of weeks, like the things they wanted to start working on now become a side project. Something else more recent has come up, whether it's an argument, etc., etc. And for me, I know like that is part of their journey, so I need to help them work through this so that that doesn't continue. And I will still like try and bring them back into some of the other shit, but I don't have a specific framework where we're doing this by week 1, this by the end of the month, this, because it's like, well, as much as I'd love for it to be like that, it just can't work that way.
So the framework I have, it doesn't, so like the way you say it, week 1, week 2, we cover over the course of the period everything within that is covered. Right, but it's not necessarily like this is going to happen in week 1. Like what might happen is we might start kind of doing week 1. And then, like you say, something else comes in. But what tends to happen is over the journey, everything is covered. And I feel like when something's not covered, I can tell that they still have their journey's not finished. And they feel it too. And it's so holistic and so covers everything that it just seems to work. So yeah, so I
fair. Like I remember when I first started my coaching, and like I had an idea of like what I would do in session 1, session 2, session 3, and I realized very, very quickly, like if I want to start helping my client go through forgiveness now, it's a very deep topic. We can start with the exercises, great, and get them really thinking. But if they're not ready to forgive, it's pointless.
Of course, yeah.
And so they've got the exercise, the tools available, and we'll revisit it later down the line. But I started to realize that I can only help my clients at their pace, and everyone is unique and different.
100%.
And so like there is no right or wrong answer. I think initially right now, them having a space where they can talk about some of the things that are bothering them, whether it's short term or long term, and getting used to the fact that it's okay to talk about these things as well, versus having to like hold it in for years upon years, is like the first few baby steps to start taking. So okay, cool.
And also what I find is people, once they start the process and wherever their focus is, that kind of starts to feel better. They feel good. But they might not be ready to go deeper in. And that's absolutely fine. And that might not happen until another 6 months later, where they go through another phase and then you work on something else. So again, like going back to talking about this framework, it's a thing that I feel like if you could do the whole full thing, you and healing is never you're always healing, you're always growing, you're always learning about yourself. But it's not something that can be done in one go. But it's just kind of like, yeah.
It's a process. Like,
Yeah.
again, it depends on what you're healing from as well. And how hurt you really are. I always relate it to like injuries. So I pulled my hamstring before I went to Toronto, right? Like an idiot. Like my dad said, don't play, and both my legs went. And I was stumbling around everywhere like an idiot. But like I'm still healing, so I can't train legs right now. It's been like 3 weeks. Some people it could be 6 months.
Yeah.
It could be years.
Yeah.
Because no matter how badly you feel, there is a process, so you have to respect that. You can't rush that process. So nah, okay, fair.
Yeah.
We're not sharing the framework for the listeners right now. Basically, what she's saying right now, ladies and gents, is that if you want to know more, give her a shout and she can help you out. Fair. I want to like jump into like that from a business perspective as well. Do you feel like you have a specific audience that gravitate towards you? Because I asked Rima this question as well.
I feel like the audience that gravitate towards me are not the audience I want.
Ooh. Oh, no disrespect to any of her clients right now, but
no, not my clients. But do you know? No, in all honesty, right? Instagram. I do because it's when you're working in this field, you need to be connecting with the outside world, right? So Instagram is a great platform to do that, but it is really hard to connect with the people that are ready for change.
Yeah.
Right. People will read your stories and they'll resonate. Yeah. But they're not quite ready to take the next step.
Yeah.
Right. So you've got to keep hot on it because one day they will be.
Yeah.
But you do get people in there. You get people who, I don't know why it is. I've not really cracked that, but they quite enjoy staying in victim mode.
Yeah.
Right. And they will stay in your audience because they resonate with everything you're putting out there.
Yeah.
But you're putting stuff out there because you want to help. You want to help people heal. You want to help people move forward. And that's, again, I forgot what you asked me.
Yeah.
But,
what's your audience?
Yeah, what's my audience? So, you know how I started off saying that I do healing adults and parenting? They are kind of like, in terms of material and marketing, it's really different.
Yeah.
So, I get more of the healing, but I'm really trying to put more out there with the parenting.
What do you mean by the parenting?
So it's the generational cycles. It's that I'm not putting enough of that out there, which is hence why I'm not getting it.
So are we talking about helping mothers and fathers be better parents and not bringing what they went through?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah,
exactly that. So you experienced this as a kid.
Yeah.
Now you're a parent.
Yeah.
So for me, with parents, is what is your intention when you do this?
Yeah.
When you tell your child stop crying, what is your intention?
Yeah.
Are you saying that because you're embarrassed about what other people around you are saying? Like if you're in a supermarket and you're shouting at your kid. So it's really specific things, but it comes from somewhere. Like, if you're in a supermarket shouting at your kid right now is crying on the floor. There's a need there. And your response is not responding to their need. Your response is responding to, everyone around me is watching me. I'm a bad parent. And so that's the parenting side that I do. And actually a lot of that has come, it's kind of a mix from like my own childhood, but also like having kids now. You know, I look at my kids and I just feel like my kids have needs and I want the world to know that they are different and they are going to be accepted. I want them to feel accepted. I don't want them to feel like, I'm different. I can't, I'm being judged and stuff like that.
Yeah. One thing you said there that I resonate with quite highly is like understanding your child's needs. And I feel like sometimes there's this challenge that parents have where they still feel like they want their kids to live their lives that they possibly did or did not have. And so they embed a style of parenting which they don't realize it initially can be quite toxic and traumatic long term. So I was speaking to a family relative of mine literally very recently about this and talking about like their upbringing of their children right now. I shouldn't say newly parents, but they've the kids are like relatively quite young, and so what the style they they bring to them right now is like to kind of be an element of being forceful, but at the same time like not giving up. And they use the examples of like say the Williams sisters, Serena and Venus, and like how their father was, and like if you look at David Beckham in his documentary recently about like how his dad was like quite adamant that that's not good enough kind of thing. And it's I think it makes you like a superhuman later down the line if you're able to excel and exceed, and fantastic. And I like the element of like, don't give up, you just keep pushing and pushing and pushing.
Yeah.
But I also feel like part of that, and I was trying to articulate to them, was it can be very traumatic if things don't work out.
Yeah.
What happens if they get injured?
Yeah.
What happens if they never get selected? What if, despite how much you've been drilling into them, someone else is better than them? Because that's life, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Do you know what that kid's now going to go through? The fact that they feel, one, they're terrible, and secondly, on the back end of it, they let you down.
Yeah.
So I feel like there's an element within that, like the way I'd like to bring up my kids would be, I'd love for them to do X, Y, and Z, and really give them the best of their opportunities that are available. But at the same time, like also reminding them that it's okay, and don't feel like you need to compete or you need to prove anything. If you don't enjoy it, that's fine. Let me know what you do enjoy, and maybe we can go down that route instead.
It's the options, and it's those two words you used. It's okay.
Yeah.
Like if you add that onto so much of what you heard as a child, you know, like I want you to do really well. I want you to get good grades, but it's okay if.
Yeah.
Like adding that on gives that reassurance that I want to do my best and I want to prove that I can do this, but if I don't, it will be okay.
Yeah.
Like it's the balance. Like you do want to push your kids, and you.
This my grandparents always said to me is like, look, just give it your all.
Yeah.
And they used to be like, look, pray to God right now, you do well in this exam, but as long as you give it your all. And it's something that's still instilled within me. Like, I say to myself, like, I may fail an exam, I may fail in life in certain areas, but as long as I know I went in there, did the best I could, and I can't walk away upset with myself. And so, like, I remember one of my cousins was telling me, I got a phone call from my aunt to say, look, not done really well in school, etc. Like, can you have a word with him? And I was like, yeah, I can have a word with him. But the first thing you should be doing as a parent right now is asking them, okay, cool, fine. Don't tell him he did shit, but let him know that, okay, there was an area which he possibly did exceptionally well at, and the rest of the exam he was terrible at. That's fine. But is there a reason?
Yeah.
And ask him that and go about it that angle versus making them feel quite bad that they've not got great marks, because
they're already under pressure. You know, like the pressure's already there. The last thing they need is the people that they love most in the world to also be pressuring them in the same way.
I think like it's a very, very, and it could be quite toxic later down the line. I don't know, but for me personally, if my child ever came up to me and got 5 out of 20, I'd be like, all right, okay, well, we know that's not what you want and that's not what you're aiming for. But you got 5. Did you understand that 5? Yeah, I understood that completely. All right. What didn't you understand about the other stuff?
Yeah.
Is there anything we can start doing to possibly help you?
Yeah.
Is it the teaching style? Is it? And I don't need to find an excuse right now, but really let me know like where you're struggling on this front, and not make you think like, how did you not get that?
Yeah. Exactly.
Because sometimes people can bug out.
Yeah.
Like you see, if you use like the athletes, like people can train and train and train, and they're ready to win a race, and then all of a sudden something could just happen, and it happens, you know, like
life,
you see in that football, favourites are meant to win games, but it doesn't necessarily work that way. You can have a mad upset or something just bizarrely goes wrong, food poisoning, and the players can't. Then what?
That's life, right? And so all of this from a kid, you apply it to everything in life, adulthood, and it's whatever you take from those situations becomes that in adulthood. Then you know.
Yeah.
So it's all about balance, and we look at ourselves, and like for me, my parents always pushed me to literally get as high as I could, and I would never change that because that it instilled the drive in me now.
Yeah.
But I don't do it the same with my kids.
Yeah.
You know, with my kids, it's like, you guys, it's that balance of like, do your best, and I'm always proud of you.
Yeah.
Right.
That's it. Yeah. I'm always proud, but I think there's also a part of it where like, don't abuse this either. I think there needs to be a fine balance. That needs to be pushed in because listen, look, don't think you can just keep coming back.
You don't want them to be like,
Mum's
my
gonna be fine
parents
a bit,
don't care.
No. How can you do better, kind of thing?
Yeah, always, yeah.
One of the other topics I wanted to like really kind of like, maybe we can't go into it in excessive detail, but maybe we can touch base on it at a later time as well, is teaching kids about rejection. The reason why I want to go into that, because I feel like it's a fundamental skill that schools just don't teach. There's an element of communication involved, but the art of understanding that rejection doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you. It's just not meant to be.
Yeah.
I feel like we don't get taught that at school.
Yeah.
I've spoken to a few teachers on the podcast back in the day, and I used to say to them, like, you don't teach your kids about what happens if they don't get into uni. They don't get their preferred choices. What if they're gonna get
You're always
heartbroken?
striving for that.
Yeah.
Always the goal is that's what you want to achieve. So yeah.
Do you have a way of teaching your kids about rejection, how to handle it, how to deal with it?
We always talk about options.
Yeah.
So like, you know, if like wherever like let's say my son's gonna go for the footy team.
Yeah.
And it's never like this is it.
Yeah.
There's always like, if you don't, then this will be. It's having those open conversations. We always talk about what the other options are, but we always focus. This is what if that's what he wants, then that's what we're aiming for. But always talk about it's okay, and we use examples. And for me, I always use my own examples, because if I'm their role model and you look at your parents as like you put them up on a pedestal. So I want them to know that I've had rejection in the past. Yeah. I've had failures in the past, and if you guys look up at me and like I'm doing good, then you guys are going to be fine.
Yeah.
But it's always like showing them that there's always options.
Yeah.
And just talking about your own experience as well. So I do that a lot with my kids.
Because I feel like with that as an example, let's say your son wants to go for the footy team. There's only so much you can do as a parent, right? So like one thing I want schools to possibly nurture into their children that they teach is that like it may not work out. Someone may be better than you. You may not fit the system, but that's nothing on you.
Yeah.
You might be too hot-headed. That's nothing on you. That's just your personality. We can work on that, but I don't want you to feel like you're a negative person right now on the back end of the fact that you didn't get selected or you didn't get picked. Like, it didn't work with the rest of the team. Like, you're too motivated, the rest of them aren't, so it doesn't work well. You ask for too much. There are so many
conversations that have to happen. Like, children just don't know this. You know, all they know is I didn't get in. I didn't get picked. So you have to have those conversations. And
the disappointment they have when they let someone down, it's like,
because it means everything to them. Like, you know, like
it's so bad. Like I try to pass that message on as much as I can to like my younger cousins that it's all right. Like if it doesn't work out, it's not the be all and end all. But speak up more. And I do see a trap where it's a possibility where they can't. And it's just their upbringing, and possibly they don't feel they're allowed to. And I'm like, well, if not to them, to me, like I'm your older cousin, you know, you can always reach out just to say, bro, this is going on. We can have a chat, because having a outlet is better than not having an outlet. Yeah. So like, I've got my next door neighbour's name tattooed on my arm because she's been like my fairy godmother since like from when I was the age of 1. Let's say she's known me since 1, and she's had like no kids. We're like been kids to her, so she's always been an outlet for me. So where I may not have been able to speak to my parents about stuff, about girls, etc. Like I've always had her there, had that space, and she's always just said, whenever you want to talk, like, you know, I'm always here. And it's like knowing that, it's
comfort.
It provides an opportunity for me to say, shit, I know who I can go to. Yeah. I don't have to keep it locked up.
So imagine a kid who doesn't have that.
Yeah.
You know, like they only have that. They're gonna have to go home and say, I didn't.
Yeah.
You know, like when you don't have that, and that's why we have to be having these conversations with the kids now. Like all of us, teachers at home, like everyone, we have to have the conversations where it's okay with how you're feeling. It's okay to express what's going on in your mind. It's okay that things don't work out, because there are so many different options. Yeah. Like there are so many different.
If you really want it that bad, and you really want to make this team, okay, cool. Let's talk to the coach. Let's find a way where we can get you in. And if there's things that we possibly need to do outside of it, and you really want it, okay, we'll go for it. We'll do the best we can. But rejection is difficult. It's a difficult thing.
It's hard. It only softens it when you are able to express. Yeah. And you're able to like have these conversations. You feel accepted. You feel like, okay, they're listening, they're understanding. But for kids, it's a very big deal. Yeah. You know, and if it's not dealt with in childhood, then in adulthood, it's
a problem.
It's a problem.
It's a problem. No, I hear you. That's mad. That is mad. I told you, I could really open up this kind of worms. I'm not going to, just purely based on timing, but it's a topic I'm very passionate about. I dislike it when I see kids possibly still going through the same things that us in our generation went through, in terms of it's not good enough. That just sticks in, and you just hold that for the rest of your life. And it's a case of you don't have to try and change to please and appeal to your parents. Like, it should be very, very well known that your parents are proud of you regardless.
Yeah. You know what? I think like the difficulty is parents are proud.
Yeah.
But you've got to think that they have their own pressures from above.
Of course.
You know,
of course.
and that's the thing. Like
Yeah.
they're trying to please the older
community.
generation
Yeah.
and society and community. So they're also trapped.
Yeah.
And they're more trapped because they can't change. We can change things up, right?
Yeah.
Our generation is like changing things up now and it's more aware. Older generation, it's so hard. Like,
Yeah.
you know, they are stuck between pleasing society and whereas we're like, I find way more people in our generation are like, no, I'm not doing that because
Yeah.
it doesn't serve me. And
Well,
I'm not doing it for my kids because it doesn't serve my kids.
Well, another thing, what happens is like if you've been grown up in quite a negative environment and you realize that right now, what you don't realize you're doing is everything you're putting out there, your actions, the way you go about life, relationships, etc., is to rebel against what was versus trying to doing it freely.
Yeah.
Like you're doing it
Like
to have to
proving
prove a
yourself.
point.
Yeah.
Nah, and like I speak to a number of people that feel like they have to do this.
Yeah,
and
I've seen this and I'm like, no.
Why?
Like, what are you achieving there?
Like, just because you okay, fine. Like, does it really feel good? Does it really feel good that you've proven something? Like, that tells me right now you're never going to be complete until you've got one over someone.
So it's like the intention. It comes back to what is your intention when you're doing that?
Yeah.
Is it just to prove a point
Yeah.
and rebel, or is it actually benefiting the situation?
Yeah.
It is. Yeah.
By proving a point, you sometimes put yourself in such toxic places long term. Short term, it might give you an element of satisfaction, but it's like to prove a point that I can get married, I can always try and get myself arranged married and yeah, cool. In a year's time, if I'm like thinking, why the hell am I with this person? Like it doesn't prove anything,
No,
right?
it doesn't. Because you've just gone and put yourself in that situation. So
that's a very bad example. Everyone listening to this, yeah. But like.
But I get it. Like sometimes it's eating you up so much inside that you feel like, no, do you know what? I'm not going to do this anymore.
Yeah.
But what you go out and do is not the right thing either.
Yeah.
Like and that's where you've not actually taken the time to process.
Yeah.
And to process like, this is what I've been carrying. This is how I've been behaving. And instead you've just let it build up, and then kind of just like gone off and done it.
I feel like the key takeaway that I have from like conversations like this is more of a, look, you can't change your parents. You can change your view on things, and like their experience in life, whatever they went through, you're not going to know it inside out. It's their experience, and hence why they are possibly very passionate about the way they have parented you and gone through their life. You can't blame them consistently as well. You have to take ownership of the fact that like it's upset you or it's got you feeling a certain way. You can make that change.
100%.
And I feel like we are the generation where we can make that change and we can implement that moving forward. But we have to consciously be aware of it and also be brave and get vulnerable at the fact that like things aren't right now. And I can openly admit the fact that there is something missing, there is something hurting, and I want to make a change and go from there.
Yeah, really put yourself in that vulnerable state. And it takes a lot to do that, but what comes afterwards is just like, it's beautiful, right?
Yeah.
Like it's the change afterwards is you want to see it for other people because it feels so different.
Yeah, I hear you. I feel like we kind of create a checklist in this, a framework. So if you are listening,
You've got it all.
you got it somewhere down the line we have. Big thank you for coming through.
Thank you for having me on.
Much appreciated. Where can everyone reach out to you if they want to get in touch?
Currently on my Instagram,
Yeah.
link is in the bio, alishap.me.
Yeah, alishap.me. Link in the bio. She's already told me that I'm putting it in the bio. Thanks.
So
Anyway, big thank you for coming through.
Thank you so much.
Thanks again for listening. It's been your boy Uncle Pre. It's always a pleasure to be in the studio and record with my guests. I hope you have enjoyed this episode, and if you like stuff like this, please do like, comment and subscribe. It helps me take the podcast to a place where I can definitely bring in more people that are going to resonate with you, whether it's their stories, whether it's their journey, whether it's just something that they're going through right now. So definitely like, comment and subscribe if you haven't already. And yeah, much appreciated you staying in here. I love everyone that comes through, and I love all the comments and feedback that I get, so keep that coming through. And yeah, it's been your boy Uncle Pre, and I'm signing out. Peace.